Today we can definitively say that the Gaddafi regime has come to an end.
The world is a better place with Gaddafi gone.
As we dive into this eye-opening video, join me as we discuss the real reason why Muammar Gaddafi was silenced. Stick around to the end, as I promise you this video is going to be an eye-opener. Let's get right into the video. Gaddafi, who was a Libyan revolutionary leader, was born on June 7, 1942 in a city called Qasr Abu Hadi in Libya, and he ruled Libya for 42 years from 1969 to 2011 before he was silenced on October 20, 2011. Although the media made us believe that he was a terrible dictator that needed to be silenced by every means necessary for humanitarian purposes, but in this video I'm going to prove it to you that that was an absolute lie, because he was killed because of greed, power and access to natural resources. So what do I mean by this? Well, Gaddafi had a dream to create a gold-backed African currency called the gold dinar. Now this currency was rumored to be stronger than dollar and euro combined, and this was going to force the Western nations to have to buy oil from African nations, and they just could not let that happen because this was also going to weaken their control over the continent. And this gold-backed African currency would have worked because in 2009 Gaddafi was the chairman of the African Union, and this was one of his major talking points as the chairman of the African Union. He was really pushing this idea to other African nations and to further convince the other African nations that this could work. In 2011, the Libya Central Bank possessed an estimated 144 tons of gold in his vault and had silver of that same equivalent. And by doing this, he was able to convince other oil-producing countries like Nigeria, Tunisia, Egypt. They were all willing to drop their currency and adopt the golden dinar. And in 2011, all these countries were on the verge of signing this to make this official. So it was going to happen. But guess what also happened in 2011? NATO decided to attack Libya, all in the name of freedom and humanitarian purposes, through the help of the pathetic, through the help of the media, who was able to convince the whole world that Gaddafi was a terrible leader that needed to be removed by all means and also to save the people. So their selling point was they attacked Libya for humanitarian and freedom purposes. But this is where it gets crazy. We saw this same playbook played somewhere else. Guess what? Saddam Hussein. Do you remember? Yes. What was the justification for attacking Iraq? They said he had a weapon of mass destruction. That was the reason why they attacked Iraq, correct? Well, newsflash, we all know by now that was a lie.
Colin Powell was the U.S. Secretary of State on 9/11. That made him President Bush's point man on the world stage. He made the case for war with Iraq at the United Nations. On behalf of the administration, Powell claimed Saddam Hussein was trying to buy raw material from Africa to build nuclear weapons, and he gave an elaborate description of an Iraqi weapons program that, as it turned out, never existed.
Ambition and hatred are enough to bring Iraq and al-Qaeda together. Enough so al-Qaeda could learn how to build more sophisticated bombs and learn how to forge documents. And enough so that al-Qaeda could turn to Iraq for help in acquiring expertise on weapons of mass destruction.
And now the former Secretary of State says the American government got it wrong. I sat down with General Powell to talk about his speech and his regrets at being the face of false intelligence. I asked him if the information he gave to the United Nations Security Council had been verified.
Of course I did. I gave that speech on 4 days' notice based on an intelligence estimate that had been done months before and provided to Congress. And every word in that speech was gone over by the Director of Central Intelligence and his Deputy Director and all of their experts. And up till 2 o'clock in the morning of that day, they verified everything that was in that speech. So it was nothing that I made up. It was nothing that I stuck in there. And in fact, some people tried to stick extra things in there that the intelligence community wouldn't verify with multi-sourcing. And I said no. And so when I presented that information, it was information that the President believed in, information that my colleagues in government believed in the national security world, Mr. Cheney, Mr. Rumsfeld, Dr. Rice. It was information that the United Kingdom and other nations believed in. And so I presented the best evidence that we had. It was evidence that persuaded the Congress of the United States months earlier to pass overwhelmingly a resolution of support if the President decided that military action was required. And so that's the basis upon which I presented it. Now, because it was me and because it was the UN, it became, a huge event, which is what we wanted it to be.
And chiefly because it was you and your standing in the country.
That's why I was sent to do it. Yes. But it turned out, as we discovered later, that a lot of the sourcing that had been attested to by the intelligence community was wrong. Imagine how I felt the day that they finally came in and said to me, well, we don't have 4 independent sources for that biological warfare van. It's one guy, and he's loopy, and he's in a German jail, and we've never talked to him. Hello? And I'm sitting there.
Well, how did you feel?
I felt terrible. And 6 months later, the intelligence community is still standing behind their original judgments, even though nothing has been found. I understood the consequences of that failure, and as I've said on many occasions, I deeply regret that the information, some of the information, not all of it, some of the information I presented, which was multi-source, was wrong. And it is a blot on my record. But, there's nothing I can do to change that blot.
Get out of this place. Damn bloody fool.
But the real reason why Iraq was attacked was because Saddam Hussein announced shortly that he was going to start selling oil of his country in euro and not in US dollar. And that was going to weaken the influence of the United States in the Middle East. And they just couldn't let that happen. So they had to convince all of us again through the help of the stupid media that Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction. And that was the justification for attacking Iraq. The same playbook is what we are seeing here again. So let's break this down. Let's wear our thinking caps for once. Africa was at the verge of signing a currency that would have freed them from the shackles of the Western leaders. The same year they were about to make this currency official was the same year that NATO decided to attack Libya, all for the name of freedom and humanitarian purposes. Coincidence, huh? I'm going to let you decide that for yourself. But let's even say, for the sake of this video, that NATO had good reasons behind why they decided to invade Libya. I mean, the goal of this invasion was humanitarian purposes and to save the people, correct? Okay, listen to this.
As a strong and very dynamic leader, loved by the people of Libya, there were some things Gaddafi did for the people, which were not pleasing in the eyes of his opponents. 1. In Libya, there was no payment for electricity during Gaddafi's reign. Electricity was free for all citizens. Fuel, education, and healthcare were almost free or close to nothing for most Libyans to afford. 2. With an excellent management of oil revenues, the Libyan state had managed to store hundreds of tons of about 143 tons of gold, according to WikiLeaks, and the same amount of silver. All these resources were going to make Libya the most influential country in Africa, supplanting France, for instance. 3. There were no interest on loans in Libyan banks and state-owned financial enterprises. Loans were given at 0% interest rate by law. 4. Living in a house was a must-have issue for all Libyans. Gaddafi even vowed that his parents would not get a house until everyone in Libya had one. In fact, having a house in Libya was considered a human right. 5. All newly wedded couples in Libya received money from the government to build their new apartments. 6. Necessities were given out freely or at very affordable prices to Libyans to better their lives amongst others. All these were seen as provocative and dictatorial to those who were not in support of Gaddafi's projects, which at the end culminated to some fighting and subsequent killing of the revolutionary leader of Libya. All these other reasons why Gaddafi was killed are gotten from the Muslim Times media source. Gaddafi even carried out the world's largest irrigation project in Libya, the Great Man-Made River. This project utilized giant pipes to send fresh water from the Nubian sandstone aquifer system fossil aquifer across Libya, and it was fully funded by the Libyan government. No loans from the IMF or China. Unfortunately, NATO forces intentionally and under strict orders destroyed this irrigation system, and even went further to destroy the factory where the pipes for this project were manufactured. This was a project that was aimed at helping Libyans, so why destroy it if your goal is to free the same Libyans?
So much for saving the people, yeah? But now you guys see why people are looking at America and the other Western nations as hypocrites, because you say something but you do the complete opposite. And we are supposed to take advice from people like this. This is sick. I'm just going to use this medium to encourage you guys, like I always do in my video, to always seek for multiple sources of information, and always try as much as possible to challenge a one-dimensional information all the time, because you just never know. You just never know the truth until you have the full story. You just never know. And I'm going to leave you with this. Do you really believe that Gaddafi was a terrible leader that needed to be removed, according to NATO and the Western media? Or do you think he was an African leader that was loved by his people and had a dream of making Africa a global force, and the Western nations just got scared and decided to eliminate him? Let me know what you think in the comments below. This is the video for today, guys. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to my channel. I upload videos like this every week, so turn on your notifications so you'll be notified when I upload a new video. And I'll see you guys in the next one. I'm out.